Now the next couple of stages are going to need the stock split in half, so you're just going to have to take out the screws and split the stock in half. And we're going to start by working on the whichever side you put in the door, so it depends on which side you want it, whether you want it on the off side or the near side. And you can see the door's all prepped and that's now dry. And then the first job we've got to do is we've got to mark up here in the back. We have to mark up where this little slot's got to fit. So the way to do that is to put it in place and then run a marker line there. And then I know that I've got to go 2mm the other side of that because I've got a 2mm thick piece of stuff, so I can put a line on the inside parallel to that. It's not going to be super straight, but it's just there to give me an idea of where I'm going. So I've got to take this section of plastic out. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can drill holes along, 2mm holes in a row, which is a really good way of doing it. If you don't have a Dremel or a cutting tool, you can use a Dremel if you own a Dremel. I don't use Dremels. What I'm going to use in a minute is I'm going to use my vibro saw, which is a slot cutter, and I'll probably use that rather than drilling holes. So I'll go and get the vibro cutter set up and I'll cut through there with the slot cutting tool in a minute. And then the other thing I want to do is I need to get my pilot hole at this end. What I'm going to use next is I'm going to use one of these, and this here is an M3 riv nut, and riv nuts are really useful. We use them in panel work all the time. They're a handy thing. Use them in metal work too, and they're basically a rivet with a thread in, and you put them in using a riv nut tool and you lock them in, and this bit's designed to collapse around the other side of the metal panel and pull in this thread in the bottom. But I use them often for making these jam doors because you can get them down where you've got a slope. You can drill an angle hole in and then you can slide them in and the epoxy holds them in place. So I'm going to drill the pilot hole for my riv nut, and what I'm going to do, because I'm going to drill an M3 hole in the end, I'm going to start by using this, which is another really useful tool that I use a lot. Wargamers will recognise this, and model makers. This is a pin vise and it's just a small hand drill. And these come in a couple of different sizes. This one does up to about 1.5mm, and you can flick the tool around and drill bigger holes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this drill. I'm drilling at an angle because I need to pilot the angled face opposite. So you can see that's just cutting through fairly slowly. It's not aggressive. And what we're aiming to do is make a pilot hole in the other side. And we can then, and we've started to make a hole there. You can see here, we've made a nice clean mark where that's going to go. And then we can drill it vertically down. Like that. It's much easier to control a hand drill in a situation like this. I know a lot of people like to use bigger tools for these sorts of jobs, and a hand drill can seem like a fat, but actually that's real controllable, and it means that you don't end up running off and drilling through your hand or through a table. So that's the pilot hole, and then what you do then is you then get a drill bit the size of your riv nut, and we'll match a drill bit to that riv nut, and we'll drill a little hole in there, and then we're going to sit this guy right down in there, and then I'll line it all up. This is an M3 thread. I'm going to use an M3 thumb screw for this, and the metal thumb screws sold by UK Nerf War are perfect for this because they have quite a long thread. And then you have to set the riv nut height so the door sits on it. You don't want that riv nut's going to sit like that. Whoops. Riv nut's got to sit like that on the door. So when your blaster's closed up, it sits like that on top of the riv nut. So you have to move the riv nut about like that laterally, and we'll do that in a sec. So I'm going to go get the slot cutter, and then we're going to cut this slot out here. So I'll go organise that, and then we'll be ready to go on the next stage. My slot cutting tool, and it's just got a little blade on the end here, and I'm going to just slide that blade into there. And the advantage about this is it's relatively controllable. There's like a little button on the back that you can control how fast this oscillates, and it doesn't make as much mess as a conventional rotary saw because it only goes side to side. So it's going to be a bit of noise. Headphone users, just watch out for a little blast while I start it up, and then I'll cut through and I'll lower the volume. So that's cut out the slot, and it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. It does melt the plastic a bit, so you have to take the swarf off. I'm just doing that with a sharp blade. It's all I always use for this. So we can just check the fit now, make sure the slot's long enough. Now if the slot's not long enough, you can always trim down your piece, but I'm going to make the slot a little wide. Nearly there. All I've got to do now is I've just got to get the tool in and just cut a section out of that, and it's between these other two, look, in the back here, and I want to leave that in because that screw port's there, and also it's giving me free support, so I just got to buzz in through the middle. And we'll just see if that slots in now. Yeah, there we go. And then I've got to open this out now. You could use a pin reamer if you own one to open that out to 3mm. I'm going to use a 3mm drill bit. I'm going to use a 3.5 because I want the hole a little looser maybe than the thread. If you go with a 3mm hole, the advantage is it'll hold the thread in place a little bit more, so I might do that. And then I have to drill this out and bond that in, and I'll show you that part of the process next. So I'm going to mess with the fit, and then we'll do the final fitting up. And then the other thing is that I want to cut a little bit out here, and I've marked the position with the knife blade. I want to make a little cut out here just so that I can allow the battery to sit down a little bit. I measured with the biggest pack I had, and I wanted to create a little bit of extra space inside. So I'm going to cut out a little section here of the internals, which again I'll do with the slot cutter. So I won't show that part because I've shown you using the slot cutter, and again a little piece in the top. So I'm down to the last couple of jobs now, and what I've done is I've made my M3, so there's my 3.5 hole there with a little bit of wiggle room around the thread, and then obviously that slots in there like that. And now I'm ready to glue this in. You need a 5mm hole to get that to fit, and what I'll do is I will attach the riv nut through here with my temporary M3. It's a little bit long, but I'm not going to worry about that because it can sit down inside the shell. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a load of epoxy around the base, and then I can just push that into the hole like that, and then we can unscrew it. So that should hopefully fit nicely in there, and then we can always mess with the hole a little bit. If you need to move over a little bit, you can make a little bit of allowance by carving to get that in there, and then make that up with glue. So if I just pop that in there like that, that should fit nicely down flush. Now I need to move the hole a little bit this way. And you can make this good afterwards with a little bit of putty. I'll finish doing that, and then all I'm going to do is lock that in with some epoxy, and it will go in like this. I'll just show you the fit so you can see. And also I've cut out in the top and in the bottom a cavity for the lipo to sit into, to just give me a bit of free extra capacity, and that will sit down like that. So you don't want it too far over, but you want it to sit down flush. So I'm going to finish bonding all of that in, and then I'll show you the finished product. And then when you wire it, all you do is literally run 2 wires through here with a correct XT60 on each end, so one XT60 for the lipo, and leave a good 3 inches of wire, and that allows you to pull through from here, plug in, and then push it back into the stock here, into the cavity, and then connect your lipo, and then you're good to go. And then obviously you can chuck that over the top. Okay, just to wind this up, here's the ready for paint sounding version, and you can see I put a thumb screw in there. Thumb screw comes out. It's quite a long thumb screw, this one. You can get them in different lengths. Obviously the worker ones are a little bit shorter. This one's quite a long thread, as you can see. You can cut those down too if you're careful, and I'll just show you how the battery fits in. So I've got room here where my cutout is. Battery fits down like that. So that's it. That's how you do your lightning stock conversion to a battery stock.